Hi guys, it's Frankie from Frankie Tech. Good to see you guys again, and I'm here with the one you've been waiting for, my epic triple comparison between the Realme X2 Pro, the OnePlus 7T, and the Mi 9T Pro. Now, I can't think of three phones that I feel match up so much better right now than these. And I gotta say, each of these phones brings something really great to the table. The Mi 9T Pro I've been using for the longest period of time, and I got this phone for 3,500 Hong Kong dollars, so just around 450 US dollars. The Realme X2 Pro is one of the newer phones that I've been testing out, and I got this phone for around the same price, but can be had for even lower, for around 3,000 to 3,200 Hong Kong dollars. So even under 400 USD, you can pick up this phone. And then we have the most expensive of the bunch, the OnePlus 7T, that just came yesterday for me. I've been putting it through its paces. This phone costs 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. So we're talking about 600 USD, 599 in the States, and is by far the most expensive. So a few questions I want to answer in this video. Obviously comparing these, thinking which one is best for you, but also there's clearly a more expensive phone here in the OnePlus 7T, and I really want to ask this question. Are you getting more for this OnePlus 7T than picking up one of these other two Xiaomi or Realme phones that are obviously really undercutting US and kind of Western market phones with their amazing rock bottom pricing, with the Realme X2 Pro really leading the charge now in this latter part of 2019. So let's not waste any more time and get into this comparison. Let's have a look. Talking about design, 199 grams, 190, and 191. All these phones are close to the 200 gram mark, and they do feel pretty hefty. But I think honestly 200 grams is now becoming the standard for phones of this size. We also have an 8.7 millimeter versus 8.1 versus 8.8 millimeter thickness. Here are all three phones on the sides, and I don't think you will notice that much of a difference between the thicknesses of these phones. But what you will notice is the finish. These two phones, Mi 9T Pro and 7T, have this glossy metal edge, while the Realme X2 Pro has a matte metal edge. And in my opinion, I appreciate the glossy look of these phones a bit more. It just looks a bit more premium, and it just feels a bit more premium as well. But if I had to pick between these three, which one has the best tolerances and which one seems to be the best built, it's got to go to the OnePlus 7T. The Mi 9T Pro is right behind it, and I think the Realme X2 Pro is definitely in last place here. Just a little bit of spacing here on the edge that I've noticed where some dust could get in. I don't know if it's just my unit, but it's not a deal breaker at this point. Let's look at the sides of these phones, and you can see three different power buttons. I will say my favorite of these is definitely the Mi 9T Pro with this red accent on blue. It is just so striking. And you can also see a similar style of placement from the BBK family phones with the power button in the same spot. And on the other side, you see a very similar volume rocker spot as well. Looking at the tops of these phones, pretty pronounced antenna bands, and you can see the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack on the Mi 9T Pro. Also the pop-up camera, which allows for that uninterrupted bezel-less display. And at the bottoms, we all have USB-C speakers in similar spots, but the Realme X2 Pro also has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So I guess 7T, you don't have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Not a deal breaker for me. I've moved on to Bluetooth solutions a long time ago, but for any of you guys who do value that, this will be a consideration for sure. Looking at the backs of these devices now, and there's something to appreciate from each of them. I do like the Realme X2 Pro's Neptune back. It's a nice color, and the center placement, I don't mind. This is a trend that a lot of phones are now moving to. The OnePlus 7T, I do like this glacier blue back. I know some people have complained it's more fingerprinty than the previous matte finishes, but I think it reflects the light in a really nice way. But I did show it to my wife, and she said, it's kind of boring. Now that's her perspective, and I think she kind of likes these glossier gradient type looks, but I don't mind it. It's a bit more understated, and yes, I think some people have complained about this type of giant circular cutout for the cameras, but I don't mind it. I think I've gotten used to it with some of the other phones I've tested, like the Mate 30 Pro and the Vivo NEX3 5G. But I gotta say, my favorite back of these has still got to be this Mi 9T Pro. Every time I take this phone out of its soft shell case and I look at this bag, I just love it. It is such a unique bag, and I still think it will win the kind of back design of the year awards. They just did such an awesome job with this, and I think the only negative I've ever had is that it gets really dark in the center. I almost wish the color went all the way to the center here. And the center placement of the cameras has been fine. I love the little kind of rainbow shimmer effect on the backs of that. And so looking at the bezels, you can clearly tell they are all of a very small size. In fact, I'd say the smallest just by eye appears to be the OnePlus 7T. The Mi 9T Pro is also very tiny, but it's maybe a millimeter larger than the other two. And the Realme X2 Pro is pretty much cut from the same cloth as the 7T. I also appreciate that they've reduced the teardrop notch on these two phones. Both the Realme X2 Pro and the OnePlus 7T now have this much smaller teardrop notch, and you can see from the top there, it is greatly reduced compared to previous generations, which is a plus. But they still can't compare with the uninterrupted and tiny top bezel and no notch on the Mi 9T Pro. This phone, from the moment it was released, still is the most futuristic looking phone of these three. It's a small little nitpick, I think, but for you notch haters who just can't stand anything interrupting your viewing content, who love the pop-up camera solution, then this is the phone for you, and I still think it allows for the most immersive experience when viewing content, when playing games, and just using the phone in general. So all these phones offer great design, but if I had to pick just one phone for overall design award, I'm gonna go with the Mi 9T Pro. This phone still offers just something that is so unique in the space, with this beautiful back with the nice glossy edges, and once you factor in that uninterrupted display for watching content, this phone just feels like the best design and kind of the best kind of looking phone of the three. But when it comes to actual build quality and the way it feels in the hand, I'm going to go also with the OnePlus 7T. Now, I think this combination of glossy rails and matte back is the way to go. And yes, I do like the back of the Mi 9T Pro, but the OnePlus 7T's matte back is kind of the thing that is in right now. Matte backs are the way to go, I think, for the future. They're not so fingerprinty, and they just give you a more premium feel, in my opinion. So I think if you want the glossy back, you're looking at the Mi 9T Pro, but I think this really strikes the best balance of having some glossy edge that is easier to grip onto, but a gorgeous back that is matte, that doesn't attract as many fingerprints in this OnePlus 7T. And now, don't get me wrong, the Realme X2 Pro is a nice design. It is a well-built phone, but I just think the tolerances are not as great. Like, there are some gaps here that I just think means this phone is a little bit more rushed in the build quality. They had to sacrifice something for sure, and I don't really appreciate the matte edge and then the glossy back in this case. And while it is a striking phone, I will say that this placement of the logo is not my favorite. It's just kind of weird. It just doesn't look right, and I really wish that they go back to the vertical placement or just aligned with the camera sensor in their next releases. Talking about display, 6.5 inch, 6.55, 6.39. Two 20:9 aspect ratio phones, while the Mi 9T Pro is 19.5:9. They're all in that 402 to 403 pixel per inch zone, Gorilla Glass 5. But there is something that separates these two phones from the Mi 9T Pro and a lot of phones, to say the least, and that is that 90 Hz refresh rate that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Scrolling through just any type of interface makes a difference. And unlike, let's say, the Pixel 4, we've seen reports that kind of lowers the refresh rate down to 60 Hertz once it hits below 75% brightness. These phones have the refresh rate on at all times. So even if you lower the brightness on the Realme X2 Pro or the OnePlus 7T, you will notice it still is super responsive. So in terms of display, I do think it is almost a tie between the Realme X2 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. Now I did notice out of the box that the OnePlus 7T comes a little bit less vivid than the Realme X2 Pro, but that can be adjusted in settings, and I'll show you guys that real quick right here. If you go to display, you can go to vivid screen calibration, and that will tend to kind of soup up the colors over, let's say, natural. But you can also go to advanced. And if you go to advanced, you see there, you now have AMOLED wide gamut. And that will go, I guess, a little bit less contrasty look to a super punchy contrasty look. And now, I mean, look at this logo. It's just kind of sick. It is just way too much for me. So I'll just keep it on regular vivid mode. And I do enjoy this calibrated display quite a bit. The Realme X2 Pro is offering a great display for the price, and I gotta say that is probably the most appealing part of getting this phone, is that you have, for the price, the lowest level, entry level 90 Hertz display on the market in the Realme X2 Pro. This thing is just incredible, and what an amazing time to be alive that we have phones now that are coming at such low price points which offer this feature that not even flagship phones like the Mate 30 Pro, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, or the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus offer. Incredible. And this is YouTube playback on the Realme X2 Pro, OnePlus 7T, and the Mi 9T Pro. All these phones do a terrific job. AMOLED, gorgeous colors that pop, and I think you will have no issues watching content on any of these phones. But if I have to pick one right out of the box, you know what I'm going to pick. That's right, it's the Mi 9T Pro. For all you guys who want uninterrupted viewing, this phone still just does it best. I don't care what anyone says. I don't mind the notch myself, but I cannot discount the opinions of my audience that does hate the notch or feel it does interrupt viewing content. I don't think punch holes and notches do that much of a difference, but if you want the pop-up solution and you want that beautiful bezel-less look, this is going to give you that look. Now, I think the notch on these phones now are so small that it really is something that a lot of you can get used to. But just pausing on this, you can see the OnePlus 7T, because it's the slightly larger display, will offer a slightly more immersive experience. Now, we'll talk about audio in a little bit, but both of these phones do have one thing that's above the Mi 9T Pro, and that is dual speakers with Dolby Atmos included. That is a big deal there. And in terms of just the audio experience, and you will enjoy the sound experience on the Realme X2 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. So this is really more of a tie. Depending on your needs and your preferences, the Mi 9T Pro might win this round outright just because of the lack of the notch. But I personally think I would enjoy watching content the most on one of these two phones. I don't mind the notch these days now, and it is so much smaller than it was before. And once you combine that Dolby Atmos sound, the larger display, and just really great colors, that 90 Hertz refresh rate, this display is going to be a great content consumption device in both the OnePlus 7T or the Realme X2 Pro. But when it comes to DRM Info, we have two positives and one L3 on my China version of the Realme X2 Pro, but I'm sure once the global version of this or the European version is released in more markets, it should come with L1 for a phone of this price and of this spec list. Now, the OnePlus 7T is L1, and so is the security level on the Mi 9T Pro. You can see here the version on the 7T, though, is 1.2. And I will also remind you guys that the OnePlus 7T is the only phone here running Android 10 out of the box, while the other two phones are on Android 9. So that might have something to do with that difference there in Clear Key CDM version. But positive news, I think, all around. And if you do get this global version of the Realme X2 Pro, you should have HD Netflix capabilities on all three phones. Now talking about performance, we have the Snapdragon 855 Plus and the 855 Plus, and then the regular 855 on the Mi 9T Pro. 8 gigs of RAM on all these phones, but the Mi 9T Pro version that I have is the 256 gigs of storage version, which is something to consider if you want a lot of storage for a low price, while these two versions are the 128 storage versions. Now looking at the Geekbench scores, we see there is a slight jump from the 855 to the higher kind of 855 Plus. I don't know why my Realme X2 Pro isn't showing those higher numbers. It may not be optimized, but this 7T clearly is, with an 11,359 multi-core score and 3,659 single-core score. It is the most powerful, at least on paper, from this perspective. But there's another way that this 7T just excels from the pack, and that is UI and interface. And I can't say this enough in my 24 hours reviewing this phone. I'm so glad that I picked this phone up just to confirm what I'd heard about from other reviewers. This is the fastest and most fluid version of Android that I've ever used on a phone, period. And I don't care what anyone says, like, oh, but it shouldn't matter too much. Like, the other skins are still also pretty fast. Yes, I'm sure they are. But when it comes to just typing, to using this phone, I've never seen a phone keep up with me so well as this OnePlus 7T. And once you add that 90 Hz refresh rate with the optimizations that Oxygen OS has done, this thing just flies. I cannot explain to you guys how quick this phone is, but I'm so glad that I picked it up to check out. It is just unprecedented, a level of fluidity that I haven't seen. But now, how does it compare to ColorOS on the Realme X2 Pro and MIUI 10 on the Mi 9T Pro? Now, MIUI 10 isn't slow by any means, but I do get some stutters occasionally using this phone. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a slow phone, and once you kind of go in and you're downloading apps and you're just using the phone day to day, it flies as well. It's not a slow phone, but you saw it there. There's just some slight stutters that happen on MIUI 10, and I think as you use it longer, it may get worse. Now, you know what I feel about ColorOS. I think 6.1 is definitely a step above and has improved quite a bit. And this 90 Hz refresh rate does also lend to real fluidity there. A lot of you guys won't mind. A lot of you guys will justify this purchase and say the Realme X2 Pro is exactly the same phone as the OnePlus 7T, and the software is just a small nitpick. That's not the case, guys. The software and UI on the 7T is another level. It's just at another level. And whether that's enough to pay the premium for the 7T, that's really up to you. But I can tell you that software is also a major component of the usage of a phone. And this is by far the fastest and most fluid Android software I've ever used. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about specs of phones. Specs tell only one part of the story. I keep telling you guys that, but I just need to say this one more time. Software is king when it comes to fluidity, optimization, and just daily use. The more you love your phone, it's because of software. Hardware is going to make you fall in love with your phone, but software is going to make you stay in love with your phone. And that is what I keep saying here on Frankie Tech. And it's just so great to see that the OnePlus 7T and Oxygen OS continue to lead the charge on really proving that these cleaner, more stock Android type interfaces are the way to go. So I really do hope that China OEMs take notice and start going for that more stock-like Android experience, because it just lends to a faster, more fluid experience overall. Talking about battery life, we have a 4,000, 3,800 and 4,000 capacities on these phones respectively. Now, I haven't fully tested the Realme X2 Pro's battery, but you can see it's got a 15-hour calculated screen on time, while the 7T is only at 5 hours 30 minutes. I haven't even charged the 7T fully yet, so I'll need to do that. And the Mi 9T Pro I've extensively tested on the channel with an 11-hour duration in my EPIC battery drain test. All these phones should last you easily a day and a half to 2 days of regular use. No issues. I do think the 90 Hz refresh rate may affect battery life a bit more, and maybe that slightly lower battery capacity will cause some concern on this 7T. But no worries, guys, because there's other factors related to the battery you have to consider, and that is charging. And if you haven't seen my review of the Realme X2 Pro, go check it out. This phone just knocked my socks off in terms of its battery charging speeds. In under 30 minutes, 29 minutes to be exact, I went from 0 to 100% on this phone. And I don't think that this OnePlus 7T will be far behind with that 30T warp charging. Now, the Mi 9T is falling a bit behind in this regard. It's got that fast battery charging of 27 watts. It can definitely charge in up to like 1 hour and like 20 to 30 minutes overall, but it just doesn't compare to the fast charging that we now see on the BBK side, Realme, Oppo, Vivo side of things. So Xiaomi hopefully will be releasing some faster charging tech soon, and I can't wait to see what they do. Stay tuned for part 2 of my epic triple comparison, including my camera and PUBG Showdowns.